Welcome to Tech Unheard, the podcast that takes you behind the scenes of the most exciting developments in technology. I'm Rene, your host and CEO of ARM. Today, I'm joined by the legendary musician Peter Gabriel. Listeners will know him for hits like Salisbury Hill and Sledgehammer, as well as his commitment to activism and innovation. Peter has long been an early adopter of new technologies in his music, having been on the front edge of digital recording, download, and distribution tech. He's also used innovative technology in other spheres, including the use of cameras and the internet, to mitigate human rights abuses with a charity witness. Always pushing the boundaries of technology and creative work. Peter ran a competition with Stability AI a couple of years ago, asking artists to submit AI animated music videos inspired by and set to his music. Peter Gabriel, welcome to Tech Unheard.
Thank you very much.
It is a pleasure to have you here. We're actually in the English countryside at the Founders Forum, which is my first time here. But we were chatting earlier. This is your 15th or 16th time to this event.
I think I was invited to the second one, and I have no idea why. But I had a good time, and I've been enjoying coming ever since.
For you personally, what do you get out of coming to something like this?
Well, my dad was an electrical engineer inventor, so I think that's the starting point for my interest. But it just feels like there's a lot of smart people who are going to influence what happens in the world, and a lot of the stuff they're generating is optimistic and positive. So I come away usually excited by some of the stuff I've learned. So for a curious mind, it's a wonderful place.
Yeah, we'll touch on a few things that we saw because there are actually some very, very fascinating demos here. But you mentioned your dad was an electrical engineer, and that's my background. And my dad was a scientist, more into physics and chemistry, an inventor. Right. But I'm curious, your dad being an electrical engineer, what were the kind of problems he worked on?
Well, I think in the war, he was part of a team that before radar, the Germans used to have a beam that the planes would travel along. And so they found a way to bend the beam so that the planes ended up dropping the bombs into the ocean rather than on land.
Oh, my goodness.
So that was a useful thing. And then he got involved with cables, and I think he ran I know he ran the first experiment running TV fiber optic cable.
Oh, my goodness.
Which is actually credited to an American, but his was 2 years prior to that.
You mentioned the beam sort of diversion for German airplanes. Was he working for a defense contractor for the UK
It wasn't
government?
I think it was for the government.
Oh, for the government directly.
But his main company was a company called Rediffusion, who mainly designed televisions, and then they created a television studio. But he also was involved in aircraft simulators that Disney bought eventually, I think, for theme parks.
Yeah, so that was, end quote, real electrical engineering in terms of developing.
And he had his workshop where he used to run away from the craziness of the family and make things and fix things. I inherited his skill to sort of disassemble almost anything. Fixing and reassembling, right. I didn't get.
Well, the road less traveled / fork. My father was a scientist, as I said. I had an interest in getting into media and broadcasting and TV, and also in engineering. And my dad said, "Well, if you want to pursue the latter, we'll fund it. If you want to pursue the former, you're on your own." Which made the economic decision very simple for me.
Funny how that works.
You didn't follow out your dad relative to the engineering background. You got into music. Why into the creative area of music versus the engineering side?
I never had his skills. I think I may have been a bit ADHD. I was dismal at exams, so I didn't have the smart enough exam results to get into university. And I was passionate about music, and it felt like all the pent-up emotion and frustration that I had, I could pour into the music. And it felt, I started off as a drummer, so I could hit things.
Well, it's interesting because, a few things. First off, probably if you grew up in this era, being not very good at exams would not have actually been an inhibitor to getting into this field because clearly there's been a lot of people who have been very successful who weren't great academic and test takers. But on the second hand, and I've noticed this in my engineering career, there are many, many engineers that I've worked with who are musicians and very good ones. And there's something about how music is created that is very analogous in some ways to the way engineering problems are solved. Do you have a view on that?
I do. I think it's probably something to do with the way the brain is structured, because it also, for maths and medicine. I mean, the first band I was a drummer in was not a very good jazz band, but it was all doctors. But I think, somehow maybe it's patterns and organization, that some sort of skill set. And I mean, I hate this division. I think arts and science should be open to everybody, and we should use AI in part to allow us all to become artists and scientists.
Absolutely.
And self-generate these creative worlds around us. So, I hate people limiting themselves. I think fear determines many, many human decisions and shouldn't. But we need to pump ourselves up in various ways in order to break through the fear.
And there's a lot I want to ask you about that in terms of AI and the brain and how we make decisions. But when you got into music, in terms of your creativity, was it something that you would write down what it is exactly you were going to try to compose, or did the ideas come to you somewhat in an analog or random fashion relative to how you constructed your ultimate output? I'm curious. Engineers start with a bit of the what problem am I solving, and work backwards relative to the logic required. In music, when you're creating something, for you personally, how does that come about?
Well, I have a theory that there are two types of creative energy. Energy A, which is more analytical, which may be mostly computer-assisted, and then energy Z, which is more intuitive and the Zen energy. And so for me, an ultimate creative structure would be different layers. So perhaps you map a rhythm in layer one and you improvise something, and then you use whatever brain power can assist you to improve it and focus on details. And then the next level might be timbre, next level melody. That's the theory. I mean, often it just happens in a messy, random way. And I remember an interesting conversation with George Martin, because he would say, what I do, I have a clear picture and I know how to get there. For me, it's much messier. I throw a lot of shit against the wall until something sticks. And I love introducing the random, and I think that's a key part of design, is to get a randomizer in there.
Totally.
But really opening things up.
Yeah, and I think when I think about AI, and I think about AI relative to our industry, it's much more the George Martin aspect. In other words, it's logical, it's a work back. If you look at the way large language models work today, they work off of a known set of answers and then test and test and test and test until the right input comes back. The Zen part that you just created, the throwing shit against the wall, that I wonder whether AI can ever accurately capture. And that gets into really the bioscience of the neurons inside the brain, that my brain is 20 watts, your brain is 20 watts. The way your neurons fire to create something is completely unique to you. I could never do it. And I wonder whether you think AI could ever achieve that.
I'm certain it will. Yeah. No, I really think that,
Why are you so certain?
Well, I mean, maybe it's just smarter algorithms that are better at generating. But I mean, there's a lot of random elements in the world which could be inspiration, if you like, for the algorithms. I can't see any job that in the future can't be better done, either with the help of AI. Obviously, person to person, skin to skin, nursing or whatever else, these are harder things to crack.
So you believe that AI will ultimately get pretty good at creativity and invention?
Yeah, I think it's absurd that it wouldn't.
Yeah, there's a lot of healthy debate on that topic, just relative to can AI solve problems that the answer is not known. And I agree with you. I think, and we're already seeing this, right? There's the aspects of artificial intelligence that are either augmenting jobs or accelerating jobs, and like with every technological innovation, will replace some jobs. But the creativity and invention and innovation, which is uniquely human and uniquely patterned to how our brains operate, that to me will be quite a fascinating bridge to cross when we cross it.
Yeah, no, it may take a little while, but I know Bill Joy a little bit, and he's working with his son on a systems-based approach to AI using fractals and patterns and trying to, I guess, reverse. I'll get it wrong if I try and describe it. But it just, senses that maybe rather than going from leaf to leaf, it might understand the branches and the trunk and the roots a bit.
Interesting.
And if that materializes, maybe that would help in this process, But it then brings up all sorts of societal questions. We tend to go towards the most effective and cheapest solutions to all problems. So where does humanity fit in that? And the universal basic income is one possible solution, but we don't have the resources to jump to that. So I think this is a very interesting and potentially awkward transition that we're making.
We're in the midst of some things that, and you and I are roughly the same age, that I did not think that we would see in our lifetime.
No.
This is one of these things I always thought that a few generations would have to worry about this problem, but not ourselves. But now it feels like we're front and center of it, which really raises a lot of fascinating questions, as you said, in terms of moral, social, societal, in terms of where things are going to go with this.
One project we worked hard on was to create a thing called theelders.org. Richard Branson and I went to Mandela and tried to get former world leaders working together so that they would have a currency that wasn't based on economic, political, or military power, but just on moral authority.
Oh, my gosh.
So, that's just one thing, but there's many people working on different projects around the world. And, I'm passionate that we need to find a way right now of connecting all the people that have optimism and hope, because, I still believe you can go anywhere in the world and you'll find kindness, compassion, generosity, but we don't have a means of harvesting us.
Yeah.
Whereas right now, hatred and division, we can harvest and we can make particular people very powerful through that process. So there needs to be a counter movement. And I think there's a growing group of people looking at ways whether you can create global passports, global citizenry, global commons, all sorts of ideas that I think could bring people in. And then whatever amount of military that gets thrown at this, ideas can't be killed off, while there's one person left standing.
I was not familiar with the elders.org. Is it still, you said
It's
Mandela?
Yeah, still going. And, and again, I think we're looking and hoping that there'll be ways that, that they have successfully influenced quite a few difficult situations. But it's an example.
I'm just kind of curious. Not familiar with it.
Well, where there's been war about to break out, a couple of places in Africa and so on, I think they've gone in. Tutu was the chair for a while and Kofi Annan afterwards, and then they've been able to go to Myanmar and Cyprus, places that have tensions still. Israel, Palestine is still, I don't know how effective they were there, but they were certainly let their voices get heard. And the idea was, Mandela was quite clear at the opening. He said, if you can't see and feel this in the village, you're not doing the right thing. They had one program against child marriage, which has changed laws in a number of countries. So there's small incremental things, but if there was a movement which could unite various people working on climate or indigenous rights, land rights, all sorts of things that could get connected.
Are governments involved in it, or?
No, and anyone who's still active in politics is not allowed to be an elder. But the elders select themselves.
Gotcha. I guess there's not a bad thing to kind of have a self-selecting body in terms of that sense.
Yeah, but a dream, might have been that, or may still happen eventually, that the people of the world try to elect people who they think have made a remarkable difference with their lives. And obviously, we've had a fair number of Nobel Peace Prize winners in amongst the elders. But it's as an example of an initiative which, I'd love to see connected with people at the bottom so that...
It's fantastic.
Well, yeah, but I think there's a lot of people doing things, but we just need to sew it all together.
You've been involved in so many interesting, fascinating things. We could spend so much time. I want to go back to where the founders from where we're at. You and I just walked through the demo tent, and
Yeah.
we saw something interesting in terms of a regenerative electronic process. We drank some algae together.
Yeah.
Good for the gut. I'm not sure about. I'm not sure about. My last algae drink for quite a while.
Yeah.
You said your dad was actually involved in something kind of interesting, similar, right? In terms of
Well, he wasn't involved at all. He was a consumer. And I think he bought a sort of plasma creating electronic device that would, I think he was hoping cure baldness.
Yeah.
But it was, I mean, I've looked at, I think it's from the 1950s or 40s, but it's got a whole list of therapies, which I'm not sure how many have the evidence behind them. But I'm passionate about energy therapy in the sense that the way pharma is structured at the moment, we're going to serve the wealthy once again, but we're not, maybe certain exceptions, going to reach billions of people around the world. However, and this is where your world comes in, I think if you can get consumer electronics generating infrared healing, ultrasound, and this better understanding of what's happening with the electricity in the body, magnetic fields response, that we can maybe get directly to individual cells and get something that you then connect to your phone and could provide high-tech healthcare to billions of people at an affordable price.
Yeah, you and I were chatting a little bit about this, and I've become familiar recently with energy therapy, and I'm a little bit of an old school guy, just from the standpoint of if it's not covered under insurance and that's covered your med plan, is it a legitimate type of procedure? But people who I know have used it.
Some very close to you.
Some very close to me, and they swear by it.
Yeah,
and it makes a gigantic difference in their lives.
And there's now the evidence there.
And
there is the good science.
So what's the blocker behind this?
Well, I think you need a cultural shift towards healthcare.
Yeah.
That the old days, we got sick, and who do we go to? We go to our parents and say, an expert. We hand over responsibility to someone else. Fix us, please.
Yeah.
But it doesn't work like that, particularly now.
Yeah.
We've got to be collaborators, both sides asking questions, not one side who knows and the other who receives.
It's an area where ARM technology is such a natural fit. ARM is in a lot of medical devices today, simple devices, home blood pressure monitors and things of that nature. All of that work that's being done is all happening on an ARM-based solution. And we've had a lot of people inside the company for years have been passionate about addressing this field. We tend to run into a lot of regulatory issues.
Yeah.
Just simply for the people who are the device manufacturers. Commercially, they just look at the amount of time it takes to develop such a device and the cost, and they run out of the gumption to continue with it. But it's low-hanging fruit, quite frankly.
And it's less regulated than drugs.
Yes.
So that there is a way, maybe through consumer electronics, of getting some stuff tested that can just be made available, and then the science and clinical trials can take place afterwards, as long as people aren't dying in the meantime.
Yeah, and I think, back to the drug industry, they've got their own motivations in terms of how pharma is set up. It's a highly regulated industry. It's a very expensive industry.
Yeah.
And alternatives are absolutely needed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I just think there's so many opportunities, and you're beginning to see startups in this area, and there is growing evidence. So.
We just ran into a couple interesting ones just in the demo area. Switching gears for a minute, I'm going to talk about stability AI. I read about interesting work in terms of creativity there around and music and such, or maybe video. Can you tell us a little bit about what that is and how you got involved with it?
Well, I just think I love any creative tools that suddenly allow ordinary people to do exceptional things. And so AI has definitely given that opportunity, both in video, imagery, and music now. I was very happy to just open up my music for people to experiment on. I mean, there are still some ethical issues about training models and all the rest, and who it takes from, but
what does it do exactly? You said
no. This was just using prompts to generate. I mean, it's mainly a technical nerd community doing these things.
Right.
But we also set up a thing because at the moment, if a video goes onto YouTube, the musician or the songwriter gets most of the income outside of the tech company, and we felt it should be if it's a good visual thing. So we have a site we call 50/50, which we're just experimenting with, which will divide the income, which we feel should be larger to the creative side.
A bit of a democratization then, if you will.
Yeah, we're trying a little bit, but I just think enthusiasm is what, I've always been drawn to.
Yeah.
And if people want to try things, and I think music is going that way too, with this sort of evolutionary approach to music. So, we had a slogan, it's the process, not the product.
Right.
And that if you can invite people in on the process so that they become co-creators with you, and some won't bother, and I don't want to bother on a lot of occasions, but when I do, I want to have the chance of getting in there and sort of growing this garden that I can help design.
Not talking about the music industry too deeply from an economic standpoint, but if you look at where it is today in terms of how people consume music, are we in a good place? Are we in a healthy place, relative to both thinking about it as an artist and then also just as how the population consumes music?
Well, I love the idea that anyone can get anything.
Yeah.
And that's brilliant.
Yeah.
But it's pushed artists' rights back about 50 years. But we had a competitor to Spotify in the early days. We were quite often early in the field. But
you were very early.
Yeah. We had a music distribution thing 2 years before Apple, and we had this somewhat similar thing called We7, but they actually did it better. But with this one, we worked out we were paying artists 10 times as much as they were getting from Spotify per stream. So they're very successul, and we sold ours on and not so successful.
So OD2 pre-iTunes, post-Napster.
I guess it was, I can't remember, it was around that time, yeah.
Yeah, around that time. That is quite a bit ahead of its time.
Yeah, I think we were, but which was often my dad's problem.
Yeah. And I mean, I think the statute of limitations for illegal downloads on Napster is probably passed.
Yeah.
But I remember when Napster kicked off, it was a little bit like Spotify now in the sense of, oh my gosh, everything's available.
Yeah.
And how fast can you download everything? And then obviously iTunes put it in a different place, but the industry changed forever in terms of distribution of music.
Yeah, which is brilliant. And Spotify was very well designed in a way that we weren't. But I think they could afford to be more generous now. They've taken dominance.
Yeah, no, I think, like you said, as a consumer of music, and I love music, it's wonderful that you can get everything at any time that you want, but it feels like all that consumption can't be good for the artists.
Well, this is a question for you then, should prompts be transparent?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I think if you've got a history that goes with any piece of software of origination and influence, then maybe micropayments. I mean, there's no real excuse why we shouldn't be able to generate micropayments.
Easily, right? I mean, selfishly, I must have done a bunch of Spotify hits on Games Without Frontiers and Sledgehammer and Lamb Lies on Broadway, and I'm thinking somebody should be benefiting from this other than me just sort of schlepping it. I hope Peter's getting a little piece of what's going on here.
Yeah, a small piece, I'm sure. It's better now, but it's still, I would say, it has a long way to go. Old, well-established artists, we've done very well. We were there in the sort of financial heyday of the music business. But for young artists and minority interest artists, this is really critical. Because live work is very hard to get.
One of the things that we talk about in my industry is what jobs will AI replace. We're already seeing with things like agents and chatbots and things of that nature where white-collar jobs can be replaced. And on one level, you look at it and say, what's to worry about here? We've seen that with every technological evolution. There are jobs that go away and things get more productive. Back to the discussion we had about invention and creativity, we maybe get to a world where music can be generated artificially. And we're kind of there now.
We're there,
some now. But how do you feel about that, both ethically, technologically, morally, in terms of, is this a bridge too far?
No. You can't, it's like King Canute in the waves. You can't stop it.
Right.
You've just got to work with it and find your corner. So I think that's the only way to compete with AI is to work with it.
Do you have a viewpoint, though? I mean, will you get to a point where there will be music created by AI with unique vocals and unique backgrounds that will say, this sounds pretty darn good. I don't really care whether it was created by a man or a machine.
Well, first producer always used to say, give me a music business without any bloody musicians, because that's where all the problems come, and we're going that way. There's a wonderful designer called Gaetano Pesci, and he used to say that beauty in the future will lie in the imperfection, and humanity is loaded with imperfection.
Yeah, I wonder, it's folks who say, we ended up having a chat with somebody, we ate at a very, very nice restaurant in New York a couple of days ago, and we were talking about could robots replace the chef?
Yeah.
And my patron at lunch was saying there's just no way people will want to know their food has been created by a person. I said, well, but we don't know who's behind the kitchen.
No,
right? The front of the house will always be people, but behind the curtain, the food tastes great. I don't know any difference. And he said, no, people will come to know it's made by humans. I wonder if the same is true with music. People will say, you know what?
No, I think, there is already a robot chef, and I think that's only going to get increasingly better. And same with music. So I think that the fringe is safer than the mainstream.
Yeah.
Because where the mainstream is where the money is, and therefore that's where AI will first focus.
Yeah, and I think the other thing it can't replace is obviously live performances.
That's a lot harder, but I went to the ABBA show, and the
humanoids were up there.
Yeah, well, ABBA Voyage. Yeah, it's all sort of virtual characters.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
I've heard about that. Is it a good show?
They do it really well. I think there's things for all of us to learn, but it's as the starting point, they've done it really well, and there is already Elvis things and Michael Jackson shows coming along. So
done like a virtual?
Yeah, virtually, and that's only going to get better.
Oh,
so, I don't think anything is safe from AI. And I think that it amplifies and accelerates everything. And humans are not amplifying and accelerating their reaction and anticipation.
So and now you've got me very curious. So this ABBA show it's a...
Yeah, you can see it in London.
Yeah, no, I've heard of it. But it's a virtual...
Yeah, it's all virtual. And I used to make a joke about it because, I think they've taken a younger version of themselves.
Yes, totally.
And so I'd said, in opposition, I'd made my avatar a little fatter, a little bolder.
When do I see Peter Gabriel and Phil Collins in the mid-1970s? When does that show come? I want to see that.
Yeah, well, so do I. Because I think all artists want horizontal income, which is where you lie in your bed and the money comes in.
Gotcha. I will look forward to seeing Genesis perform again in some virtual tour. Peter, it was a pleasure.
No, it's a real pleasure.
It was fun.
Great to meet you.
Thanks for listening to this month's episode of Tech Unheard. We'll be back next month for another look behind the boardroom door. To be sure you don't miss new episodes, follow Tech Unheard wherever you get your podcasts. Until then, Tech Unheard is a custom podcast series from ARM and National Public Media, and I'm ARM CEO Rene Haas. Thanks for listening to Tech Unheard.
ARM Tech Unheard is a custom podcast series from ARM and National Public Media. Executive producers Erica Osher and Shannon Boerner. Project manager Colin Harden. Creative lead producer Isabel Robertson. Editors Andrew Meriwether and Kelly Drake. Composer Aaron Levison. ARM production contributors include Ami Badani, Claudia Brandon, Simon Jared, Jonathan Armstrong, Ben Webdell, Sofia McKenzie, Kristen Ray, and Saumil Shah. Tech Unheard is hosted by ARM Chief Executive Officer Rene Haas.